The president has not read the Mueller report or the Constitution, and that is why the president once again today proved himself to be the most ignorant person in the history of the American presidency and possibly American politics by saying that he would turn to the judges that he has appointed to the United States Supreme Court to save him from impeachment. That will never happen, but it does seem that today is the first day of what promises to be a Trump administration illegal war, with every House committee seeking information and witnesses from the Trump administration. And we are very fortunate tonight, on this first night of this epic legal battle of Trump versus the Congress, to be able to take our constitutional guidance from our next guest, Harvard Law professor Laurence Tribe. He's a professor of constitutional law at Harvard Law School and has argued dozens of cases in the United States Supreme Court, something that most lawyers don't get to do even once in their career. And joining us now is Professor Laurence Tribe. He is co-author of To End a Presidency: The Power of Impeachment. And Professor Tribe, I think your impeachment book, is it about a year old now?
Right. It came out in May of 2018, and the paperback with a new epilogue just came out in March of this year. So depends on how you count.
And much of what you, the guidance you gave us in that book was in many ways putting the brakes on talk about impeachment that we were hearing then. This story has changed dramatically to where we are tonight.
It certainly has. I was saying impeachment can be very divisive. It can have a big backlash. It can look like we're trying to undo an election. So we have to go slowly and carefully. But after the Mueller report came out with all of its astonishing revelations about the systematic and sustained Russian attack on our democracy and the president's sustained efforts to obstruct inquiry into that attack, even inquiry of a counterintelligence type that would enable us better to protect ourselves from ongoing attack in 2020, it became clear that there was no time to lose. And so that's why I'm very much in favor of the kinds of hearings that Representative Nadler, as chairman of Judiciary, is engaged in now. They're not called impeachment hearings, but the impeachment process, for anyone who understands what's going on, is underway. It's underway, but they don't have the bumper sticker yet. They're looking into all of the evidence, connecting the dots, and as your earlier guest said, putting live witnesses on the air so that people can see for themselves, through people like Don McGahn, just how corrupt and fundamentally criminal this president was. And we cannot assume that public opinion will be completely impervious to that demonstration. That's why the president is trying to shut them all up, trying to stonewall in this unprecedented way, not invoking real legal privileges, but just saying, I'm the president, and I say I don't want any of you to cooperate with Congress. Who's Congress anyway? A bunch of pals. And it's an astonishing exercise in arrogant obstruction of justice. It's very much like, but much worse than, what Nixon did, leading to Article 3 of his articles of impeachment, the article about contempt of Congress. That's what we're witnessing. We're witnessing contempt of Congress, contempt of law, contempt for the American people.
Yeah, I have that article of impeachment right here, and it is actually exactly what the president is doing today. It says, on this article of impeachment, it says that he failed without lawful cause or excuse to produce papers and things as directed by duly authorized subpoenas issued by the Committee on the Judiciary of the House of Representatives, and willfully disobeyed such subpoenas. That was an article of impeachment. It says in that article that the president interposed the powers of the presidency against the lawful subpoenas of the House of Representatives. What the president did today was an article of impeachment against Richard Nixon.
And he did it today in a context where the national security is at stake. I mean, bad as Nixon was, with all the cash and the plumbers unit, he wasn't really inviting a hostile foreign power to keep invading our country and our sovereignty. He was not engaging in treacherous betrayal of the American Republic. He was being a scofflaw. He was being a crook. But now we've got somebody who is fundamentally engaged in treachery. Nothing could be more serious. And I have enough faith in the American people to believe that when they see this live, and not just in a kind of dead 428-page thing that I'm sure the president hasn't read, but lots of other people who can read haven't read, then I think things will change. But of course, the president is not satisfied with that. He's, as you said, he's threatened to go to his Supreme Court. An amazing idea.
Professor Tribe, I am embarrassed to use your brain power for the answer to this question, but let's just pretend that you are visiting an elementary school somewhere in Cambridge, a fourth grade, a second grade, and a kid there.
I've done that.
Of course.
I like doing that.
And a kid there raises his or her hand and says, can the president stop impeachment in the Supreme Court? What would be your answer?
Well, I would say that presidents can't do that. The Supreme Court just a few years ago said that it had no role in the impeachment process. And actually, kids, there's a good reason. Back when the framers met in Philadelphia, they were wondering who should have a role in the removal of a president, in charging him through impeachment and then putting him on trial. And a lot of them initially thought, well, how about the Supreme Court? They wear black robes, they're going to be good guys. And eventually there was an overwhelming rejection of that idea for several reasons. First of all, the president might have appointed some of those guys in black robes, or now women in black robes. They can't be objective. Secondly, there was a concern that after a president is kicked out of office, he can still be tried criminally. And that hopefully will happen when this president leaves office, because he's committed a lot of crimes. But who's going to hear the appeal from a criminal conviction of a president? Well, that would have to be the Supreme Court. But they would already have ruled if they had a role in the impeachment process. And then on top of that, there was a concern that the Supreme Court would be too clubby and small and too easy to corrupt, whereas the Senate, they hoped, unfortunately, they might have hoped too much. The Senate would be incorruptible and large. And finally, they thought the Supreme Court wouldn't have the prestige that it would take to stand up to a president of the United States, because the court hadn't yet developed that prestige. So for all those reasons, they said, we're going to have the Chief Justice preside over the Senate, but we're not going to give the court any other role. And that's where it stands now, so that the most ignorant thing the president could possibly have said, and insulting to the justices that he named to the court, Justices Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, was, you're my guys, I'm going to get help from you. I think that nobody would advise him to alienate the court that way, but I'm frankly not all that upset that he did, because now they're going to have more backbone.
They will have to. Professor Laurence Tribe, thank you very, very much for joining us tonight on what may be the first night of a long legal battle between the president and Congress. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Lawrence. It was my pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.